Donald Trump once again found himself being arraigned in federal court, this time accused of trying to overturn the 2020 election results. Before leaving D.C., he spoke to reporters on the tarmac at Reagan National Airport.
This is the persecution of the person that's leading by very, very substantial numbers in the Republican primary and leading Biden by a lot. So if you can't beat him, you persecute him or you prosecute him. We can't let this happen in America.
For more, let's bring in Chief Washington Correspondent Major Garrett. Just, Major, if I can enlist you in a quick fact check there.
Sure.
Is Donald Trump beating Joe Biden by a lot?
No, by a little smidge here and there. It's not irrelevant, but it's not as big as he says. And being a political candidate does not insulate you from investigation or prosecution. American history is full of political candidates who have been investigated and in some cases prosecuted. So that's not true either.
So thank you for taking care of that. Okay, so we've now had a day to sit with this. Mm-hmm. You stood outside the courthouse today. Well, first of all, atmospherics are, sometimes weird. But on the other hand, this is a story about atmospherics. I mean, it's a story about the tumult in Washington, D.C. What was the feeling there at the courthouse, relative to the images we've seen about the thing at the center of this case?
Inside the courtroom, procedurally to a T, he is a defendant. The former president of the United States, he was treated better than most defendants, given deference about when he would arrive, how he would arrive. The schedule for the remainder of the other cases in the court were clear today to make room for the former president. So as defendants go, he is treated and being treated, this is the third time now, with a kind of cocoon of deference around him, which he then exploits politically. Because he arrives in a motorcade, he leaves in a motorcade, he looks like a near president. All of that amplifies things to his benefit in the larger atmosphere about what these criminal cases are about, helping him say, oh, I'm the victim here. Outside the courtroom, things were mostly quiet, small crowds, some Trump supporters, some denouncing the actions of the former president. They engaged each other a couple of times right by our live shop position, did so civilly. There were some bullhorns involved. There was a volume competition. But generally speaking, it was very civil, very mild, very low key. Security was amped up, but it really wasn't as necessary as it, well, I don't want to say it wasn't necessary. After January 6th, there is an overemphasis on being super prepared, sure. And they were super prepared, and properly so. But the atmospherics outside, if those in the Trump world were expecting a big rallying effect, didn't happen in Washington, it didn't happen in Miami, it happened a little teeny bit, and it didn't happen in New York City either. I don't know if that's telling, but I do think it's worth taking note of.
I don't want to talk about the facts of the case in a minute, but
Sure.
Speaking of the rallying effect, when you and I first talked after the first arraignment, you were down at Mar-a-Lago, and it was an arraignment rally. You
yes,
said
indictment party. Yep.
An indictment party. How? And they raised the former president raised a lot of money off of that. How has that energy sustained through 3 indictments in terms of being able to raise money and so forth?
It has not from small donors, not at all. There was a huge influx of money to the former president's campaign right after the New York City indictment, the first one, because that broke a seal in all of American history. The first indictment, and it was covered like, oh my gosh, we've never seen, what does this look like? And there was a rallying effect. There was a little bit of a fundraising bump after the Mar-a-Lago indictment, but much smaller by comparison in dollar amounts to what happened after the first indictment. And the former president's campaign sends relentless email appeals on this basis. We'll see what the haul, I don't want to be glib about it is, but there is a means by which they do try to raise money instantaneously off indictments. We'll see if this one is as good as the second one, which wasn't nearly as good as the first one.
So looking at the indictment or just the whole both political and legal response to this, what's the ball we should keep our eye on for this going forward?
2, what is justice in America? And can it be applied to a sitting president, now a former president, who's a candidate, who while in office made a series of choices? Early in my career as a police reporter, I covered a lot of cases that went to court. And oftentimes defense attorneys would say, my client made some bad choices. Do not be so harsh on the bad choices my client made. The former president made choices as the president. To ask a question, was the election he was a participant in 2020 fair or not? He was told not once, not twice, but repeatedly by people he employed and whose advice he sought in their professional positions to advise him. No, it was not stolen. You lost fair and square. Then he made a series of choices to use tools of government, his at the federal level, to intimidate and harass his vice president, to intimidate state legislatures, and to defraud people who filled out fake elector slates, being told those would only be used if the former president were successful in a legal challenge. That was not the approach. They were defrauded.
Mm-hmm.
All of that was set in motion by a set of choices made by one person, defendant Donald John Trump. And related to that, do in this country, we believe in the peaceful transfer of power.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the former president is vindicated in this matter, then he is essentially saying the peaceful transfer of power is discretionary. It is a discretionary indulgence of the occupant of the presidency. And if he doesn't want or she doesn't want to give it up, she is fully entitled or he is fully entitled to use whatever means to deny the country a peaceful transfer of power.
Briefly, who keeps, this could just go through the news cycle and we're back to campaign and that's it. Who keeps the eye on that ball? Are any of his challengers going to do it? Is it?
It appears the former vice president has been, to a certain degree, liberated. He knew he had testified. He knew he had given the special counsel contemporaneous notes. He is now speaking much more forcefully about what those notes said, the pressure he was under. There will be Chris Christie. There will be Will Hurd. There is Asa Hutchinson. Other Republicans may see this as a moment. They may not. That's for the Republican Party to sort out.
It's quite interesting, though, about Pence, because he's doing it, and he's also doing it in the terms you were just speaking in constitutional, sweeping, broad. We'll see if it has any purchase. Major Garrett, thanks so much.